Right, right. Welcome, everybody. It is Sunday evening, and we're obviously going to go through what is happening in the markets potentially this week. I do feel like I've been repeating myself a lot recently. I feel like I've been, repeating that it's going to be hard. It is hard. So we've got to, wait and see. But obviously we'll go through everything. We'll go through the outlooks, but the big one this week, the really big one is going to be inflation. All right, so CPI data for the US dollar on Wednesday, and it's going to be a big one. So that is obviously one that we're going to have to, line up, and we're going to have to just be a bit careful of, so because basically. Um, we've not had the best jobs data. We had a real reduction in in jobs in regards to non-farm payroll, but we obviously had a negative unemployment rate. Now, it doesn't really mean too much, but I think yes, there's a massive, mismatch here in regards to obviously what is happening, and obviously how this data is being categorized because you can't have a minus 21 thousand jobs or whatever it was and have a reduced unemployment rate. So there's real employment worries now off the back of employment worries. We're going to obviously have a very good indication of inflation. All right. So this is obviously one thing that and I'll obviously go through this again on Wednesday morning. But obviously, if we have hotter inflation, all right. So if the inflation comes out, over 3.5. And we've got, not great employment data. That is a huge issue, because it means, that obviously, yes, they are going to be, struggling in regards to trying to obviously get a grip of the dollar here. So what we are expecting, and like always, what we kind of need to look at, in regards to this week is going to have to be oil. All right, oil is going to dictate what is happening and why. And obviously we do need to be aware of whereabouts it is, and obviously what we should be, expecting here. So let's obviously have a look at this on a weekly time frame, and let's do the traffic light, system again. All right, so I would say so 80 to 65, all right, is going to be our amber. Yeah, 80, probably 80 to yeah, 80 to, let's make it a little bit tighter and be a bit realistic. All right. So that's our like amber area here. Yeah. Right. So that's where we're almost happy, but obviously, we're a little bit, we're worried about everything that's happening. Then from obviously above 80 up to this high part, that is red. All right, so potential inflation worries, and then we've got obviously from here down to here is going to be our green. So we could, I mean, it's not going to go back down to there, but let's go, I don't know, 45, say 45. Let's have it in this area here because that's going to be whereabouts we're going to be. Green is good, yeah. All right, so if we get rid of this, all right, we've got our amber. Let's just move this over here. Move our red. Let's just make sure red is above slightly. So 80, let's raise this up to say, for example, let's go 81 just to make it a bit clearer. All right, so 81, and let's go 69. 69 and 55. There we go. Yeah. All right, so that's kind of our kind of the data that we need to be aware of here, in regards to oil here. It is amber's good, and it means that we're kind of either or, something might happen if we drift down, because this is obviously one good thing that's come out of everything is there's been positive talks between Iran and Oman. They are very, very close to signing an agreement. However, Iran are being quite stubborn. So they are basically saying that included in this deal, they want some compensation from the US. They want tighter, or not tighter. They want more relaxed, sanctions that the US are trying to impose. And that they basically want the US to, completely stand down from the Strait of Hormuz. So it's looking positive. That's obviously what's been happening over the weekend. Now, if obviously we'd see this agreement happen, oil should be nicely down in this green area. That in turn will drag yields probably back down into this amber below 4.5%. Yeah. And then in turn, I don't think dollar's going to take too much of a hit, because obviously it's going to relax inflation, So depending on the data that comes out, we might see dollar potentially creep down into this 99, but then stay within this kind of area here, So, staying within kind of this area here, for a while. I don't see it unless we obviously have worries. Now, on the other side, right, if we have oil lower, um, sorry, if we have oil, let me just go back to my notes here, and I will be able to tell you. I've drafted this up here. So if we have inflation hot, we have oil hot, then yeah, we're obviously all going to be talking about stagflation, which means yes, it will benefit gold. All right. But obviously, if this war ends, then, lots of this drive, one, yeah, is a bit to do with the weaker dollar, but don't expect gold to carry on pumping just because the dollar is, weak here. All right, because we've got to remember, a little bit of this, and I think gold pumped over 7% last week, which is pretty huge. Or it's the biggest move to the upside it's had for a while. But obviously, remember that, lots of this is geopolitical and it's inflation, because obviously, it's oil. Gold is a hedge for inflation. So I am kind of Monday, Tuesday, I'll be betting against the dollar, just because there is nothing, good kind of coming out. If we look here, we've obviously got more jobs data on Tuesday. We've got nothing tomorrow. We've got an interest rate vision for Aussie, so potentially might be looking at that. Obviously, yes. Then kind of Wednesday, it's starting to paint a picture. We've got some GDP for the pound. We've got more jobs data, which, again, starting, not to look great. And then Friday, we don't really have a lot either. We've got some retail, sales data, but obviously that's not what the main kind of focus is at the moment. The main focus is employment, and inflation. And those are the two kind of main things that everyone uh needs to needs to kind of be looking at here. So that is what obviously we are going to be looking at, going through a few of our pairs here. um if we're looking in regard to GBP, it's messy. All right. Look at this price here on a weekly time frame here. Potential squeeze. All right. Potential squeeze happening. Um, if we're looking at it something like this, however, we are probably looking that it's gonna break out. But then we've got to be thinking, right, you know what? If this is going to continue higher, all right, what are the levels that we're going to want to be focusing on here? All right, one potentially might be here, and obviously remember that this is a weekly here. We got one. I mean, we can probably let's just do this for now, but we can probably drag this all the way across here. Look, we got something like this. We could probably on a lower time frame, remembering that we're on a weekly here. We could have something like this. So let's just have a look on the daily. Yeah, because even this here is going to be a pretty hefty move. Look at that, 150 pips. It's probably going to take Monday and Tuesday to kind of eat into, that kind of format here. Now, looking at obviously what we should be focusing on here. If we look at the previous day, which is going to be Friday, we've obviously, not gone crazy. It's broken out slightly higher. I guess it's closed, equal to the 3rd of August. Nothing crazy's happened, So tomorrow, I would imagine we're going to be targeting this area here. Let's just make this white. Just being realistic here. If this is our overall target here, right, we can't expect it to happen, all in one day. I mean, we had a pretty big day here. Remember, it's popped down a bit as well. So we're probably looking something like this all together. Probably something like this here, So even if we had a huge day, we're obviously still not going to run away with it. And there's a reason, even after non-farm payroll, it's not had a crazy bump to the upside here. It's struggled to break through. However, I do like the idea of everything trading a bit higher, especially as there's no dollar news coming out. We're kind of speaking about de-escalation as well, so I'd be looking at probably, we're obviously you guys know that I don't trade Asia. I like to obviously let it play out. I like to see what's potentially going to be happening. So I would probably be looking at these two areas here, and I would much prefer to be obviously buying from down here tomorrow. We've also got kind of this area here. So you've got three areas which I'll probably be looking to buy from um, tomorrow. So yeah, we'll obviously have to wait and see. Yes, I would love for this to creep down slightly. I don't think we'll get to this area. I think probably a more realistic is probably this area here. And if I make this different color, that will probably be a more kind of realistic area. Because I don't think we're going to engulf Friday. And I think if we do, we'll continue to the downside here. So potentially this green area here will be my ideal target to be waking up tomorrow, hoping to get this kind of, move happening tomorrow up into this area. That will also be what that be? That'll be like 80, 90 pips, which would be brilliant. So that'll kind of be what I would be looking at for tomorrow. Um, make sure you get your questions ready. I'm going to go through a few things here. So gold is again tough. All right, huge week for gold here. If you look, one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8 weeks in gold here. So it's a pretty big move up for gold. We also had this. Have a look at stocks. Stocks obviously started to rise. How was their week? Huge move for US 100, SPX 500 still creeping all-time highs, US 30 all-time highs. So there's no kind of worries here about them putting money into certain stocks, but potentially might be obviously oil based, stocks. But I'd be looking again to buy gold. I don't think it's going to gap up too much, if anything. We obviously might come back down into this area, but remember the chance of us obviously engulfing Friday are pretty slim. Um, I like potentially like this daily area here. Let's just go down on a 2 hour before we go to daily on us. So we've got, yeah, potentially most recent price action. You might want something here. Oh, delete that there. Let's have a look at this one here. Um, yeah, Friday low is here. So. And then we've got to be thinking, right, where are we going to bump into? So we've got obviously this area here, which we kind of rejected from. You can always tell, you can see here. And then you can see, obviously, here we've rejected once we've broken through. You can see it. Let me mark it up. So where we've rejected from Friday, just put that there, right? You can see previous price drove down into this area, rejected, pushed up, price broke through, come up, rejected this area, as you can see here. All right, rejected this area. Continued, come up, rejected again, rejected again here. All of these things you've got to be, trying to notice. So ideally, what would I like to see? A nice pullback into this area, and we buy up into to here again. Probably leaving a TP open because I think if this breaks, we could potentially be looking to go higher. We might potentially then be looking into this kind of zone here, which will be another huge kind of trade. But I think gold is a bit intermittent, another like 830 pips there. So yeah, let's we'll wait and see what happens. I don't think gold's going to be as straightforward from, but obviously Wednesday we should have a little bit of a clearer picture. Um, One thing that I was going to say to everyone, let's go through some of the trades that I did on gold on when was it? Thursday, Wednesday. So every single day on gold, right? And we'll take like Friday into consideration. All right, you want to be marking up the previous daily high and the previous daily low. Yeah. All right, every single time here. All right, you then want to go on to your 8 hour and you want to be marking out Asia. Now, Asia, I'm going to mark in a box here, right? And then as the sessions happen, right, you want to be marking these ones out. So let's do Asia in purple. Let's do London, all right? In say we'll do London in I don't know green. Yeah. So we would obviously have London marked up, all right? As we're gonna trade it, coming into the US. All right, all right. Then yes, I probably would be looking right. You know what? If this breaks, well, where are we kind of looking into? Potentially would have been like I mentioned before, this kind of area around here. Yeah. All right. Because we've obviously had so many rejections from here. So if I'm going on to like a 15 or a 5 minute time frame here, all right, you want to first of all identify, all right, is price bullish or is it bearish? Is gold today trending higher or is it trending, lower here? All right. So, there was a few kind of opportunities, so well one that I, would have, and obviously I didn't trade much on Friday because I was traveling, was, as soon as this Asian session's broken, as soon as it's been retested and rejected here, right, I would be looking to scale up to this zone here. So this zone here is the previous daily high. Yeah. All right. We've already been convinced here that Asia's held. So stops, overall stops will be somewhere here. Yeah, but then, wherever you want to add in, all right, whenever you want to add in. So, even if you let this drift up and then it come back into this area, I was adding in here, taking this trade up to this area here. All right, same thing here. All right, you've got to one thing you've also got to be aware of here is when we and there was one day, I think it was Wednesday actually, it didn't quite play out. All right, because we had a bullish Asia, a bullish London, and a bullish New York. Right, that's like 1 in 30. All right. What happens, probably 29 times out of 30, you have, smaller Asia, bigger London, all right? And then you have obviously New York trades within, London, right? It might break out slightly higher, but it's always going to close down here. All right. So 9 times out of 10 in the afternoon, I've been doing really, really well on this. I've been trying it out for about a month on a smaller account. Is you obviously let this London session close, right? And it closes at 3 on the 8 hour, all right? And if London has been big, all right, you want to wait for New York to kind of pip, and then that's when we're going to start to sell. Yeah, right. Because we know statistically, which obviously increases our risk to reward here, that New York will close within London, and I can pick it out all the time here. That Asia, right? London engulf, nice big London. New York trades within, right? Asia, London, New York closes within London. Asia, London, New York closes within London. Asia, London, New York closes within London. This one was the exception here. And then we've obviously got, Asia, London, New York closes within London. Yeah. All right, so and I could scroll back so many times here. All right, or yeah, you're gonna have your random one here where it pops up, and then we've got Asia, London, New York trades within London. Right, Asia, London, New York trades within London. It doesn't break out. Yeah, right, it doesn't ever break out here. Where else have we got one here? So we got Asia. Yeah, that's one of our ones here where, what you ideally want is, London to have a nice big, move because then it works out. So here, right, Asia, nice big bullish move, London, New York trades within London here. Yeah, right, you want that. Asia, London, nice big move here, straight in one direction. New York pops up, comes back. I think I traded this as well. Pops up, pops back down. You can almost guarantee it's going to come back down and trade within, London. Same here. Asia, big move, London, New York comes and trades back down. It's never going to engulf it, but obviously it might come in halfway. Same here. I could go on and on and on and on and on, but obviously that is one thing that will yeah, you obviously need to be aware of here. So as long as you got right, as long as you've got all the time, right, previous daily high and low, you want Asia high and low, and then obviously if you're trading New York, you want London high and low, and then you just trade between them. Just trade between them. Whereas the NFP, news has come out. All right, it's come out. It's tested. Previous daily high is pumped up. All right, we already, know that it's going to struggle to break through. And then you're just trading. I mean, here was hard because it's quite slow price action. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? I'm pretty excited for this week. I'm not looking forward to Monday or Tuesday, but I think from Wednesday we're going to have a lot clearer picture in regards to what's happening because there is a bit of risk appetite at the moment because obviously we do have stocks flying. Remember, all right, this is the stock market here. The whole history of the stock market, right, is climbing higher. Right, higher and higher and higher. If you look at US 100, almost at all-time highs. SPX 500 is at all-time. This is the whole history, all-time highs. US 30, the top 30 companies, all-time highs. All right, so there is definitely risk appetite out there. So we obviously need to be aware of that. Does anyone have any questions at all? Happy to answer anything. Otherwise, I'll end it here. I'm going to have a shower, and yeah, be all prepped. Like I always, mention to everyone, do not, do not, yeah, I don't recommend trading, Sunday evenings because, spreads are always high. It doesn't matter what broker you trade with, spreads are always higher, Sunday evening. And there's big manipulation too, so I wouldn't worry. Stephen, is there going to be a crash on stocks? I don't know, really, because they've been saying that the AI has been propping up the stock market. Every AI company is overinflated, but obviously due to the Strait of Hormuz being closed. I mean, I even went because I'm gonna buy my daughter. She needs a laptop for obviously year 10. But even speaking to the guys at Apple, they're having a real hard time ordering in chips for their laptops. So but even with all this rubber, this bad stuff happening, this inconvenience happening, it's still trending higher, so I don't know if that's necessarily true, in regards to it's an AI bubble and it's going to blow because if we look around, AI is only just getting started. So yeah. But no, what have we got here? Matt, thank you. No problem at all. Samsung SM first live I've watched, learned lots. Thank you. No problem at all. I'm always here. I'm going to start doing Monday boot camps as well. So every evening, I'm probably going to start just having a big question and answer. All right, because sometimes during the mornings when we're live trading, it's a bit hard for obviously everyone to ask questions, but obviously yes, Monday evenings we'll just have it completely open. You can ask a question, it's no problem at all. So yeah, right, I hope everyone has a great evening. Let's smash it, and yeah, have a good one, team, and I'll see you first thing tomorrow. So have a good one.